Welcome everybody to the third of our four-part series of webinars exploring place sufficiency. I'm Wendy Russell. I'm a Senior Research Fellow at the University of Gloucestershire, and this webinar series is curated by myself and Mike Barclay and Ben Tawil from Ludicology.
Afternoon, everyone.
Our involvement in place sufficiency began right at the start in Wales, so the three of us have been involved in either doing and or researching place sufficiency for over 10 years now. I'm going to be chairing the proceedings today, and Ben and Mike will be monitoring the chat and adding useful links and curating questions for the speakers. So it's lovely again to be joined by so many people, and the numbers are still clicking up. I can see them. From a range of professional sectors and all over the world, and a special hello for those of you who have joined in the middle of the night from the other side of the world. As before, this is a webinar format, so your cameras and mics will be off, and I'll remind our panelists and speakers to keep their mics on mute while they're not speaking. All communication for attendees is through the chat. The webinar is being recorded, so you'll be sent a link to the recording after the event. And I just need to say that the webinars are funded by the University of Gloucestershire and supported by the team at Play Wales and by Genero, for which we are very, very grateful. Our first webinar was an introduction to place sufficiency, and it looked at the history and a few key principles of place sufficiency. And our second webinar looked at what's happening at national level in the UK. So we heard from Wales and Scotland, and then some comments from people from England and Northern Ireland as well. If you missed these two and you'd like to watch them, they are available on YouTube. Just search YouTube for Exploring Place Sufficiency, or hopefully a link will magically appear in the chat just now. So today we're kind of coming from the big picture to a more local picture. And today we're going to be looking at place sufficiency at local government level and the role of local municipalities, or local authorities as we call them in the UK. And we are really pleased that we can bring you an excellent lineup of speakers who've been busy doing place efficiency in different contexts across England, Scotland and Wales. So we're going to be hearing from Jenny Rutherford from Leeds City Council in the north of England. Give us a wave, Jenny. And from Etive Currie from Glasgow in Scotland. And from Tracey Jobber from Sandwell in the West Midlands in England. And from Gareth Stacey from Wrexham in Wales. It's a packed programme, so we're going to get going straight away with it, and I'm going to have to do that horrible thing as a chair of giving people a 2-minute warning if I think they're going to go over their time. So without further ado, I will introduce Jenny. So Jenny Rutherford is Leeds City Council's Place Strategy Officer and works in the Child Friendly Leeds team. Alongside colleagues in Active Leeds, she leads on place efficiency, and amongst other things, Jenny is part of the core team developing Leeds Community of Play, and she leads on the city's Play Street project. There's a lot of leads in that bit, but that's great. So over to you, Jenny.
Thank you so much. So yes, I'm Play Strategy Officer, and probably worth mentioning before I start that we have not had that role for a long time in our local authority until we completed a place efficiency assessment. So I think that in itself is significant. So I want to talk to you about kind of why we came about doing place efficiency in Leeds and kind of our progress with it. And we are a city that has an ambition to be a child-friendly city, and that has been the case since 2012. So we're not a city that's new to talking about children and young people and to prioritising children and young people. We also have a university course at Leeds Beckett University that is around play work that has been protected where others haven't, and a hospital offer that is kind of 7 days of play work. So this isn't new to us, but when we started trying to talk within the local authority about play, although we talked quite a bit about children and young people, we actually didn't talk a lot about play. And so that's why that quote is up, is that it was sometimes a bit of a case of play as a nice to have. And maybe we'll get around to kind of thinking about that once we've done all of those kind of important things. And it wasn't because people didn't care, obviously, but there was just nothing there in our kind of structure, governance, policy, strategy that said that this is something that we should be spending time on. And so if I take you back to the beginning, it started when I used to work for Active Leeds. So I now work for Child Friendly Leeds, but I started off at the council with Active Leeds, and I had a role that was all around supporting communities to move more, and it was a localities model that we did. So we were basically, we targeted our resources to our what were called our city's priority neighbourhoods, where people were kind of most impacted by the effects of poverty. And what I found there was that we were having lots of conversations about supporting people to move more, but the conversations ended up being about play. It was, you know, parents who their own physical activity was quite far down a priority list, but they were still really, really fierce about their kids' opportunities to play. There's nowhere for my kids to go. There's nothing for my kids to do. When we tried to kind of take that insight and kind of translate it into, oh, you know, look, here's a new development that's going to happen, or here's an opportunity for something, a new thing that's going into a park. We found it really, really difficult to influence in terms of the local authority around play. Our voice as officers wasn't really enough. And we were working particularly in East Leeds in a place called Seacroft alongside an organisation called LS14 Trust, who were like the real deal, the proper kind of grassroots organisation who were really trusted by the community. And they were having those same conversations, and they did actually start, they had a play box in their local park, which is, you can see it in the picture. It's a big shipping container basically, but you can kind of open it out and it spills out wonderful playful resources. And so Playful Anywhere, we worked with them on that, and that kind of, that in that green space where that had become this kind of no-go zone started to really transform that place. So we were understanding the value of it. But our voices weren't really being heard at that kind of local authority level. So it was going well, and then kind of we started engaging with Ludicology and saying we need something more because we're just not cutting through. And then COVID happened. And I think what was significant about that, so LS14 Trust had seen just how valuable this play provision was in their park, and they decided that they wanted to try and continue to support families in a different way. And so they developed, in partnership with Playful Anywhere, the mini play box. And that was a box of play resources to support families to play at home, basically. And it was meant to be just families in Seacroft that got this provision, but some of our kind of political leaders heard about it and were saying, well, this needs to be kind of across our priority wards. So it ended up being this massive project during COVID. And so as a city, we were delivering food and we were delivering medicines. And then we were also delivering play, which was brilliant because it really elevated the status of play, and it kind of legitimized it as an outcome, and it was kind of aligning it with those really, really basic needs. So that was really significant, and that kind of led us on to continue those conversations with Ludicology and decide to take that extra step. And we were able to do that through Active Leeds had a project called Get Set Leeds Local. So we commissioned Ludicology to come and work with us on a knowledge transfer process. And this is what we did. And I think, you know, I started off by saying that our voices weren't really cutting through. And that is why I think what was massively important for us was having this process. And this really kind of, we go through this process, we kind of have this data that is reliable, is rich, is robust, it stands up to scrutiny. And I think a local authority loves an evidence base, and this really gave us it. So this is kind of some of the things that we did. And we did that by mobilizing an implementation team, and it was largely Active Leeds officers. It also included some public health colleagues and our third sector partners, LS14 Trust most notably, but some other third sector partners as well. And I think what was great was that those officers and colleagues, they just totally saw how this work around play aligned with exactly what they were trying to do. So we had this great team that went out and did this kind of mass data collection. Our main kind of sample ages through the school was year 5s and year 9s. Year 9s was much trickier, but we managed to get into a lot of primary schools. And then what was also really key was that it was training around how do you go and deliver a workshop where you're not leading the children a particular way, and how, and you know, it's kind of difficult thing to talk to them about in schools where they might think there's a correct answer to give. But we had that training there. We had that training around data analysis, and that was massively important. So we ended up with this brilliant evidence base that really stood up to scrutiny. And what we found through that, I haven't got loads of time to go through because we found out loads, but I tried to pick out some real key themes. And I think mental health was one of the really striking things that came out of the research. So we didn't ask children about, you know, does play impact your mental health? But they just overwhelmingly spoke about it when we said what is play and why is important. They articulated so clearly that it was a way of stopping depression and that it was also about emotional regulation. So it was how they took a break and how they relaxed. And I think the other thing that came through really strongly was kind of a big theme around permissions to play across all of our areas. Worth mentioning actually that our areas that I'm speaking about is it was all those areas that worked with our kind of active leads approach of that localities model. So it was what we call 6 priority neighbourhoods, kind of LSOA level, and those kind of most impacted by poverty. So we kind of came at it through that lens. And what came out really strongly as well as another theme was permissions to play that was closely linked to kind of community safety and kind of crime. And so it was a lot around parents through focus groups, and kids were expressing that places didn't feel very safe, that routes to places didn't feel very safe, and that there were lots of things that just meant that they were not kind of occupying those community spaces. Obviously, you can see there was a lot around signage, signs saying don't do this, don't do that. And this is why the data analysis was really useful, because for some children that kind of said through our research that their play satisfaction levels were, play satisfaction was great, we dug a little deeper, and actually those kids, where they played, they were only kind of listing rooms in their house very often, sometimes a garden if they were kind of lucky enough to have a garden. The other thing that was really came through strongly was streets and just what valuable spaces they were for play. And good streets, so where there was lots of space, their friends were there, permissions to play were there, nice and smooth for scooting and wheeling, they spoke about a lot. And bad streets were where, unsurprisingly, they talked about cars and traffic a lot. So cars and traffic and parked cars, they stopped them from playing places, and they stopped them from getting to places to play as well. But that nature was also massively important. So even if kids just didn't really had very little opportunity to play in nature, they intrinsically craved it. Spoke a lot about nature around the fringes, so just playing with sticks and playing with conkers and leaves. And when they spoke about what play is, that all the kids spoke about, a lot of kids spoke about nature. And essentially what it came down to as well was around a space close to home, but a choice of spaces. So space that also feels like it's designed for me. The older kids spoke a lot about the younger children, annoying them and shouting and screaming, and the younger ones spoke a lot about the older ones making it feel scary. So it was a choice of spaces close to the home that really was kind of key. Friendships was massively important. Play was how they made friends, how they consolidated friendships. And in school, there was a varying picture. Responses within a school all tended to be the same, but across schools, it was quite different. Playful adults really supported play in school. A lot of kids saw school as a safe space to play. Many children didn't rate playtimes very highly and often didn't consider them as play. So that was some kind of really key learning that came out of our research. And we fed that into 9 priorities. So this came directly from the research through into 9 priorities, which then that kind of inform our action plan as well. And what and that action plan is kind of our then response as a local authority to kind of supporting opportunities for play. And what has also been so important is just been the kind of the principles and the approach of play sufficiency, just that encouraging people to think about play as everyone's business. We talk in Leeds about play being everybody's business, and how you can look through that lens of play and think about how does that decision or action that I'm going to take impact upon children's opportunities to play. And that has been a massively powerful thing for us in Leeds, is just encouraging people to do that. And after we had the research, it was this big push around awareness raising. So as a team, we did lots around team meetings, around kind of one-on-one conversations, and then we did some larger workshops where we just shared with as many people as possible, this is what kids have said, and this is kind of what they want to happen. And it just sometimes just takes that for some people, just like this kind of light bulb moment of, I just never really thought about it. So that lens of play bit has been massively important. And when people start to do that en masse, then you kind of start to get the change starts to happen. And so I think in Leeds, something that we've done really well is bringing play into policy. And this was not something that was there before the play sufficiency assessment. When we did our policy analysis, there's places where you might expect play to be, it wasn't there. Certainly wasn't there. Sometimes the places where you'd expect children and young people to be, there was not much mention. And it was sometimes in the case of children in terms of well-becoming as opposed to well-being. So but this kind of policy bit was massively important, because when we did our focus groups with officers, permission for officers was really key to be able to spend time on play, because a lot of officers felt like, I can totally see how my work links to that. I can totally see how play will benefit it and improve it, but there's not really the permission there for me to spend time on it. So this has been really, really important. And we started off by kind of getting it in those places where you might expect it to be, some of it on that list there. Then we had a bit of
morning, Jenny.
Thank you. Then we had a bit of a turning point where we went through executive board, and that our executive board is kind of our highest level of decision making for our council. And that really changed it, because we asked for an endorsement of our principles and approach, an appointment of a play champion at exec member level, and also for them to help drive forward our action plan. And that was really significant. And following that, then we saw policy across our Best C ambition, which sets out the vision for the future of Leeds as a whole city. So that's massive. Through our health and wellbeing pillar, which sits underneath it. We got play as a section on a My Health, My School survey, so that we can really monitor and get that baseline satisfaction level year on year from schools. And planning has been a massive way in for us, in terms of they were just they got it from the start. They went and put play sufficiency into their Leeds local plan update and as a hook, but they're working on a vision for policies on play and recreation in child-friendly cities. And they've gone out and done a load of extra learning just off their own, nothing to do with me, that's been around urban planning and play. So that has been massively important. And I think, give me another shout, Wendy, when it's like, stop, Jen. And then I think this bit, it's just changed the way we talk about play. We don't talk about play in playgrounds anymore. We talk about playful neighbourhoods. And our housing officer, who we've been working on, that's also kind of real key moment of success as well. They are planning a big conference on waste management and how we're going to revolutionise waste management in Leeds. And they came and said, play is a massively important part of this. Can you come and present? And that felt like a huge success, because waste management is absolutely about play. And to get officers start thinking like that is just really, really significant and exciting. Do you want me to stop?
Yeah, draw it to a close and then stop. Yeah.
Okay, and then I think I'll just say this kind of, we're having the challenge for me is the strategic role versus what goes on locally. Does that impact more kids, more kids playing more of the time? So we're doing some really local projects to test and learn and ripple effect across the city. And one of those is Lincoln Green, where we're removing no ball game signage. putting in some training for local organisations around play through partnerships with Leeds Beckett, and really kind of doing the built environment bit with a play trail and invitations to play as well. So hopefully can learn and kind of spread that across the city as well. Okay. Thanks, Wendy.
That's wonderful. God, I feel exhausted just listening to you. That was a real gallop through an awful lot of work, and I'm so sorry that we've had to limit everybody to 15 minutes. I think one of the big things that really comes through on the great work that's been done in Leeds is that political buy-in. So thank you so much for that, Jenny. We'll move on now to introduce Etive Currie, who works for Glasgow City Council in Scotland, where she is the lead officer for their place sufficiency assessment and also for their Living Well Locally process. Etive is a planner. She's a senior planner, and she was a co-designer of the Scottish Place Standard tool. And as such, she represents the council at national and international levels to talk about and run training sessions on the Place Standard tool. And her work builds on this. There's a really big national play-based approach in Scotland, and that's what Etive's work builds on. And she's created a collaborative co-design approach with children and young people about where they go, what they do, and what needs to change. She's also a World Health Organization place advisor and contributes to global research, development, and delivery on everything placemaking. So we're really, really pleased to have you here, Etive, and I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Can everyone see my screen? Excellent. That's the first bit of out the way. Yeah, I'm Etive Currie. I'm a place lead for spatial planning, and we do research and development on how to create better place-based approaches. So in Scotland, we've changed how we approach play, and I can't get my slide to change. Oh, maybe found it now. Sorry. So yeah, the Town and Country Planning Act has actually changed in Scotland. So all local authorities or municipalities have to do a place sufficiency assessment, and it's not just counting things, it's about the quality of play that we provide. And if you want to look at NPF4, that's our national planning framework. We're split up into sustainable places, livable places, and productive places. So place sufficiency falls within the livable places sector. And we also, if for all you policy geeks, it's policy 21 is the key one within National Plan 4. And then obviously we're in the Article 31 for the Children's Rights Charter. And in Scotland, we have to deliver on the Children's Rights Charter, and play must be a big part of that. And then, so we're hoping that we move from, putting children in cages, fencing them in their play areas, to play everywhere. So play on the way, play outdoors, and play on your doorstep. So the Place Standard tool plays a big part of that, because we have a children's version and a young person's version, and it's now embedded within our policy within Scotland as the way to engage with people. So it moves away from just looking at one topic to taking a more holistic place-based approach. Nobody wakes up in the morning and decides to be a planner. So working with children, are we going to influence the urban shapers of the future? And have those inclusive conversations and that collaborative design approach. So that's our basic principles that we work to. The Living Well Locally is about how to live well locally. So you've all heard 15-minute neighbourhoods, 20-minute neighbourhoods can be a little bit divisive. So we've changed in Glasgow, we're looking at living well locally, and that includes our local centres, and our place efficiency assessments are a huge part of that, as well as being connected to our open space strategy and our forest and woodland strategy to focus in on more natural play elements. So we have to take a place-based approach in Scotland. And it is about having those conversations with the right people at the right time. And we all know that a place can be designed and it looks fantastic, but unless we look at how people move through spaces, you end up with this image that the user experience is very different from the original design. So this is we started with looking at the children's version of the place standard tool, and I worked with the education department in Glasgow, which was really difficult to get into education, but managed it. And we had a conversation around how we could take the principles of the place standard tool for children and adapt it into creating a better offer around play. So we came up with this, and the really small children in the nursery schools, they were just given a word cloud, and we asked them questions like where could they go to shout, spin, jump, swing, and the primary schools, the questionnaire was filled out by the teachers. And we asked the kids if they had a magic wand, what would their ideal play space look like? So we got a lot of beautiful pictures from the children. And we even got children that went out, the school took them out to play. And so we ended up with a kind of about 700 to 800 pupils responding to us. That was over 12 schools, which is good, but not brilliant. And we're in the process of repeating that with the schools that we haven't touched to date. So then we moved on to the teenagers, and it was about getting the process right with the teenagers, because we felt that they were the most ignored in our society. So we worked a lot with them over one school in particular, and we asked them about what play means to them, how they would like to be approached, how they would like to be talked to. And we worked with colleagues from the Centre for Civic Innovation. So we got together and we planned the way forward, and it had to be, for me, right from the outset, it had to be about co-designing an approach with our teenagers. It was about how they could tell us the story. So that's going back to the place standard tool. It's about your lived experience and what does that mean. And it was shaped by young people, and it was for young people. So we did a pilot with one secondary school. Once we were happy with that, we rolled it out to 10 secondary schools, rolled it out to 18, and that we managed to cover the whole city. And that created a 1,714% increase in participation from our traditional methods. So it was about co-designing, and we held some design jams. We asked children, young people, where they went, what they did. They took the lead, so they went from listening to the teacher at maybe assembly to then running the sessions themselves, and they found it really, really easy to do that. And then from the findings, we had that the favourite location for all the teenagers was the shopping centres, which I found really sad. The city felt unloved. There was a huge difference where they went and what they did. During the different seasons, places, open spaces made some people feel uncomfortable. But that wasn't the space itself. It was more about how the other people using those spaces, they wanted more nature. And there was the big barrier to play for the teenagers or free time was around that lack of time with school pressures as well as home pressures, because we had a lot of young carers that responded in certain parts of the city. So that was really quite difficult for them to explain, the things that they had to take on as extras. So we managed to get over 5,000 responses, and that was across 18 secondary schools. So that's 17% of the secondary schools in Glasgow and about 29% of the pupil population. And that is a huge, huge increase to normally, the tick box engagement that children have been used to. So it's definitely about them leading the way. So our place sufficiency is about co-design, inclusive and innovative participation that gives young people in Glasgow a voice, and also lets them help us design the places of the future within the city. So from that, we managed to look at how we roll it out further. So it's linked to the open space strategy, how we look at existing spaces. So as children grow, these spaces need to be more flexible and we can interchange that. We're looking at the barriers that exists within certain parts of the city, because Glasgow's a bit funny. We have really affluent bits next to really deprived bits of the city. So it's how we make play jump those barriers and create a really inclusive play city. And then from that, we put play at the heart of the city. So the survey is an interactive survey for the children. It's on Mentimeter. The teenagers love Mentimeter. It takes around 10 to 20 minutes. It requires just one device, and it can be facilitated, at any time within the school day. So it could be done during break time, and then we go on and we have a further, once they've done that, they go on and do a design jam, which is looking at the spaces around the school and around where they stay at home. So we gave these information packs to the secondary school teachers, and they can ran it themselves. And we received the overall RTPI awards in Scotland for our approach. And the picture that you see is the group of children that were the pioneers of our methodology for police efficiency. And then from that, we are continuing to work with education, the Centre for Civic Innovation, our Parks Department, and of course, most important, the children and young people. So we hope to keep the children from across the city involved and host further big design jams to see what is it that needs to change. We also want to set up a series of test sites where we can test natural play as well as existing play equipment, and can the children test that existing play equipment to destruction, where they can take it apart and recreate different shapes, what works better for them. And also we're working with Inspiring Scotland, who look at more outdoor care. So how do we look at care outside for children? So ultimately, we want to move to develop a how-to guide for inclusive play across Glasgow that we'll use to inform plans, strategies, and also help us decide on planning applications, as well as creating a play strategy for the city as well. So work with other services to create that play strategy. And that's something that Thriving Places and Inspiring Scotland are helping us on already. And they're looking at 26 primary schools across the city to say, how do we do this in the right way? How do we take people on that journey of change? And that includes the parents, because in Glasgow we find it's about giving people permission to participate. And it's also about giving children that permission that they are part of this discussion, and that we hope that then will inform further the planning work across the city. And in Scotland, we don't get our development plans approved now until children's voices are heard. So we have to say, get into that habit of, you said, we did, is that right? So you've got that continual loop of consultation going on, which I have to say is proven a little bit difficult already, because you've got certain colleagues that are very traditional in the way of working, and we're getting a lot of pushback. Plus, we don't have a lot of money. So that's the other thing about what can we do with the existing funding, as well as what can we do with new funding that comes in as well. So I'm just going to leave you with this slide, because I think that the future of our place efficiency is about co-designing inclusive places for with young people, for everybody, because that's what I'm finding, that the teenagers in particular wanted to talk about place. It wasn't just about play, it was the impact of the place that they stayed in, how it made them feel, how they would want to see changes, and they were all really proud of the fact that the council wanted to hear from them, which I thought was a big change for us as practitioners. And I think it's just about listening to children and including them. And I've certainly found that's made a big difference to how I'm taking forward, because I'm not a play expert by any shape or means, but it's how we're taking this forward. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Etive. There's so much there that I would that I've got lots of questions. I'll save them all to the end. But the engagement that you got with secondary schools sounds incredible. But the pushback that you're getting from colleagues, I think, is also very interesting. But the biggest thing for me is how in Scotland this is all planning focused, and it's all part of the local development plan. So you said you're not a play expert, but you're a planning expert. And for planning experts to do what you've done, an award-winning piece of work, congratulations. And hearing children's voices in that way sounds fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Lots of ideas there. So moving on swiftly, we'll move on to Tracey now. Tracey Jobber is the Place Service Manager and Place Sufficiency Assessment Lead Officer at Sandwell Metropolitan Borough Council. She's been working with and supporting children and young people in a variety of roles, including the voluntary sector and community sector, for over 20 years. She currently lives in Shropshire and is looking forward to springtime, nearly here, ever so nearly here, as she enjoys growing her own fruit and vegetables. So Tracey's going to have, I think it's Danielle is forwarding your slides. So we'll have the next slide, please, syndrome here. But welcome, Tracey, and away you go.
Thank you, Wendy, for that introduction. Yeah, I'm from Sandwell, and for those of you who don't know where Sandwell is, it's right in the middle of England, and it's surrounded by its more famous cousins, which are Birmingham City Council, Dudley, Walsall and Wolverhampton. And we're kind of stuck right in the middle of those quite large local authorities. But we have been fortunate enough over the last 25 years plus to have a dedicated play service. And we were one of the local authorities that back in 2006, 2007, got some funding to build infrastructure for play spaces within the local authority. But we decided to take a place efficiency approach because we wanted to look at the existing play strategy and review it. And place efficiency presented an ideal opportunity for us to evaluate our current position on play and identify what was working for who and where. And conversely, what wasn't working for who and where, and how could we develop some responses to that. As Jenny said, Sandwell, about Leeds, Sandwell, it moves more towards an evidence-based approach to commissioning services than ever before. And the process of conducting a place efficiency assessment provides the data that enables the formulation for that strategic evidence-based action plans that make the best use of financial and human resources that are available in the current landscape. Also, earlier this year, Sandwell committed to working with UNICEF on its child-friendly journey to embed children's rights into practice. So place efficiency also provides the mechanism by which the local authority can realise its intentions to become a child-friendly community. by adjusting its focus to children's agenda of playing. Play sufficiency also directly contributes to Sandwell's own ambition of growing up in Sandwell. Oh, next slide, please. Sorry, Ben. Sandwell's own ambition, which is for children and young people to be supported to lead happy and healthy lives with an access to a range of opportunities for positive activities, play and having fun. This assessment is Sandwell's second attempt at completing the full assessment, with our first one taking place in 2019. But that particular assessment was curtailed by the lockdown restrictions in 2020. We did manage to collect a lot of data and identified the emerging themes, but we weren't able to conduct any of the cross-departmental work. But we were able to make use of that data that we collected. And what we did, we made some adjustments to the way that play provision was commissioned and provided for between 2023 and 2026. Interestingly, the most recent survey in 2024 indicates that satisfaction levels had risen from 2019 from 72% to 75% in 2024. Next slide, please, Ben. So how did we go about it? Well, we partnered with an organisation called Ludicology because they have extensive experience in supporting local authorities in conducting play sufficiency assessments. And they provided the theoretical and ethical framework along with the research tools for the assessment. Their support has enabled members of our implementation team, whose work is not necessarily based with children or in research, to be able to work effectively to collect data, conduct data analysis, code data, and create narratives around each of our case study research areas. The implementation team had been recruited from a hugely diverse range of departments across the council, and each bringing their own knowledge and experience from their relevant specialisms to look at what they do through the lens of play. The team were doing this as well as their day job, but they've remained highly motivated and engaged in the process, and their commitment has been an unexpected highlight of conducting the research. That means that more officers at the local authority now have the experience and skills to conduct more type of this evidence-based research. Of course, we worked extensively with children and the play sufficiency process to look at how the experience. We work with children to. The play sufficiency process is about researching with children and their carers, exploring localised conditions for play and their actual lived experience of playing. So in 2024, we conducted an online play satisfaction survey and invited all Year 5 students to participate. The survey consisted of 16 questions asking children about their time, space and permission for play, and asked them to rate their overall satisfaction. We had 1,525 responses out of a possible 4,862, which was a 34% return. This gave us a sample size that was large enough to give us a 99% confidence level rating in the data that we'd collected. So we were really pleased with that as only being our second attempt. The responses from the survey enabled us to identify primary schools where students rated high, medium and low levels of satisfaction with their opportunities for play. And we approached the head teachers of the schools identified to see if we could conduct further research with children to uncover the reasons behind their responses. We conducted the same online survey with Year 9 students and parents so that we could discover what might be different from the Year 5 responses and would enable us to triangulate the data. We can be confident that the data we've collected via this mixed methodology is robust, credible, transferable, transparent, and holds up to scrutiny. We also work with over 30 senior officers during the assessment process, and including knowledge transfer sessions, semi-structured interviews and presentations. Next slide, please. So what did we find out? Well, from the data we collected directly from children and young people, we were able to identify some emerging strategic priorities. These themes and priorities are being explored currently through semi-structured interviews with senior officers to help refine them. One of the priorities was to help improve children's experience of playing in school and during adult-run after-school activities. As children spend most of their time in school, improving children's experience of playing is crucial. They told us that evenings and weekends and school holiday times were identifying as having more time for free play opportunities. Children also told us that they were not allowed to play out after school in their local neighbourhoods due to parental concerns around safe access to places. And those concerns included traffic and children's ability to move around their own environments. So to improve children's opportunities for playing outside with friends after school in term time became one of the priorities. Another one of the priorities was providing direct support for children experiencing extraordinary barriers to play. We were fortunate enough to be able to work with some children with protected characteristics. And in this particular case, it was children with special educational needs, transgender and LGBTQ. And we know they told us that they faced even greater barriers to access to free play opportunities than the other children we work with. And some children experiencing no time at all spent without an adult present. This cohort of children also told us how important play was to their mental health and well-being, and how online play and play with digital devices provided for that in an environment that they felt was safe. Another one of the priorities was to improve children's freedom of movement and opportunities to play on residential streets by reducing the constraining effects of traffic. Sandwell has a huge amount of traffic, and addressing the amount of traffic and improving conditions for play on residential streets is important to us. Priority number 5, to improve parental permission for playing by improving children and adults' perception of community safety. We want to cultivate a culture of permission within local neighbourhoods for children's opportunities for playing, and improve adults and children's sense of community safety by addressing the associated parental concerns, planning for play at a neighbourhood level and working with communities so they can support children's play, and for play work to be seen as community development and cohesion. We also want to look at balancing the time between the time that children spend playing on digital devices and out in the public realm. And of course, last but not least, we want to protect the existing times and spaces for play for those children who access positive play experiences. Next slide, please. We're coming towards the end of the semi-structured interviews, and officers have been identifying quick and easy changes that they can make immediately in their work, as well as the more strategic decisions and considerations, which are already changing the landscape and narrative at Sandwell towards children's play. Some examples are the agreement to remove or replace the no ball game signs, which have appeared, and including children's voices in a tenants and residents housing conference. And that will be the first time that's ever been done. And they've all been actioned prior to the assessment being completed and published. We've also received a great deal of support from departments, particularly planning, housing and public health, neighbourhoods and policy. and it's been a good opportunity to conduct a large amount of advocacy work across departments to talk about the importance of play. We're currently in the process of writing the full assessment and developing the action plans, which we are preparing to take to Cabinet for approval in June. Everyone who's been involved with the assessment has shown a huge amount of commitment and enthusiasm, which has made the whole process really exciting. Our colleagues in public health are particularly excited as play sufficiency demonstrates perfectly how the council is using data and evidence to support decision making, which they have showcased on their health determinants research collaborations. Sandwell's HDRC is a 5-year partnership between the council and the University of Birmingham and the voluntary sector, working with wider partners and stakeholders across the borough. And they are currently looking at putting together a PhD course on housing, play and wellbeing. Thank you.
Wow, thanks. A PhD on housing, play and well-being. Brilliant. That sounds fantastic. Thank you very much, Tracey. There are some themes that are beginning to emerge across the speakers here. Just how people get it when they start looking at it, I think is a theme that comes across. And one is just the level of response that people get from children as well. The response rates to surveys and things like that, and making changes as you go along. So you don't need to have completed things. You can change things as you go along. It's fantastic. Thanks so much, Tracey. We're gonna move swiftly on now to Gareth. Gareth, Stacey is the place efficiency lead for Wrexham, which is in North Wales. He's worked within the play sector across a number of local authorities in North Wales over the past 15 years, which means that he has been involved in some capacity in every play sufficiency cycle since its commencement in 2012 in Wales. So Gareth has a wealth of experience of working with play sufficiency, and we're really pleased to have you here, Gareth. So thanks, take it away.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Good afternoon, everybody. As Wendy mentioned, my name's Gareth. I'm the assistant team lead for play and youth in Wrexham. Now, I've been asked to kind of talk about Wrexham and our process, and it will be a whistle-stop tour, but after hearing those presentations, which are wonderful, I've only added to my presentation with notes that I've added to my piece of paper, so bear with me here. So I'm the team lead for the play and youth team within Wrexham. It's quite unique in Wales because we're responsible for play and community youth. So we work with a broad range of children across the disciplines of play work and youth work, and some of our staff are trained in both. So we have a real oversight in Wrexham, and it's really to our benefit. So hang on a minute. There we go. As I'm sure you're aware, I'm fortunate enough to live and work in a local authority which has legislation for children's play in Wales. So, as I'm sure you're aware, in 2010, as part of the Children and Families Measure, play sufficiency was introduced. Now, without going to the ins and outs of it, what this has meant for somebody who works within play work and as a play development officer, it just firstly provides us with a mandate to go to other services within the local authority and other organisations that work with children to say that not only should you are required to support children to play. I quite often, my job is working with other people at a strategic level, at an operational level, and I kind of sum it up as, if you work with children or you're making decisions that impact children, then you have a responsibility to support them to play. Okay, you have a responsibility towards their sufficiency. The second thing, really, I suppose, is it demands us to go through the political process. So we have to engage through exec board, through scrutiny, through a high level within the local authority. And the third thing for me is the terminology. It's been around a while now. And what we found is, I think Jenny was talking about a shared language earlier, is that now I don't have to justify why play is good. It's known within Wrexham that play is a good thing. and terms like the play workforce and the play workforce are really useful tools when I'm talking to officers, having had it for so long, that they understand what I'm talking about. As mentioned, we've completed 4 place efficiency assessments, currently undertaking the 5th one. What I will say is I'm going to be talking about, again, Jenny mentioned about accountability and responsibility. The first part of my presentation is about accounting for, so doing the assessment, part 1 of the measure, part 1 of the duty, and then the second half of my presentation is about how we go about responding to that, talking about how we secure sufficiency for children and young people. I will mention from the top, I joined in 2019. So a lot of the foundation work had taken place prior to that. So I owe a debt to the team that was in place there to what I'll be talking about now. But also, just because place efficiency in Wales has been around, over 10 years, doesn't mean we've got everything right. There's still ideas and projects that I know was talked about in 2013 that we haven't took through to fruition, or that we're still working on. It's a constant thing that we're looking to achieve. Within our team, we talk about the assessment, which provides us a snapshot of what's going on or what's happened in the past 3 years. But we use the term place efficiency as a verb. We're constantly doing place efficiency. It's never ending, if you like. The assessments are every 3 years, but place efficiency is a constant. So in terms of our process, we've heard a lot about the processes that authorities have taken, and we're very much similar. So the difference, I suppose, is we are given a prescribed technical template, which is 116 criteria across 9 matter areas. I think 116 is about right. So it's a very, very expansive document where we have to look at how all elements impact the way in which children play. And I'll talk about that again slightly. But for us, it's about the Children's Place Satisfaction Survey. It's that term sufficiency. It's what is sufficient for children and young people. And the way we find that out initially is through that satisfaction survey, which talks about time, space, and permission. But ultimately, we're asking them, are you satisfied? Is that sufficient for you? We undertake targeted focus groups with children with technical characteristics such as, young carers, disabled children, teenagers, LGBTQ children, home educated children, because we anticipate that they face extraordinary barriers. So we need to go in, and if we're to provide sufficiency for those, we need to understand what their needs are. Community profile, and I'll talk about that a little bit on my next slide. But just an example, in 2022, nearly 1,800 individuals were involved across 39 service areas and organisations. So this is just a bit of an overview of what the results of our surveys each year. As I said, we've got wealth of data because we've been doing it for a while now, where we can track satisfaction levels. Unsurprisingly, our latest one, 2021, satisfaction levels dropped. And I think also that rubbish, went up. Children were saying to us more than ever that their opportunities to play was rubbish. So as much as we can say, 7 out of 10 are satisfied, we're looking at a lot of children there who are experiencing really poor opportunities to play. So demonstrating this work to do. And this is just the overview of the satisfaction question. We have data around, time children have and space children have as well. Through the survey, we're able to create, this is Wrexham, by the way, for those who are unaware, and the wards of Wrexham. We're able to create these sort of infographics around where satisfaction levels are. Now, I urge a bit of caution with this because it depends on the sample size, and it doesn't necessarily mean that exclusion is really poor for children. However, what it does do is it provides us with an indicator of where things may be working and where things might not be working. And what we did in our last assessment cycle is we went into those communities to really examine what were the conditions that made children say that they were they were satisfied with their opportunities to play. So whilst the questionnaires are really useful, I think it's really important to note that you need to go in and do a bit further work with that community. again, this is just the range of organisations that were involved in the previous assessment. So that snapshot enables us to identify priorities. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we've had long-standing priorities within Wrexham, and they haven't changed too much over the years. I think we introduced priority 13 in 2019, which talked about communities, about how we enable communities to identify ways in which they support children to play. We have to submit an annual action plan each year to Welsh Government, and these priorities allow us to be innovative and to respond to children's needs, because quite often, as those you involved in this work will know, you set out to do something and then something else appears, and you may go down a slightly different path. But what I would say is all the work of the play development team and the local authority in general in regards to play, the work falls within these 13 priorities. Okay. So now we're talking about responsibility in terms of what we found. So within Wrexham, we have a framework which we call systems. Systems-based approach to achieving sufficiency. So we have 6 systems. So here are just a few examples of some of the projects that we've done in Wrexham. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, because you know, I'm more than happy for that to be picked up in Q&A or afterwards. But by having these systems in place, it gives us a framework that allows and enables different approaches to occur in regards to sufficiency. So I'll just talk briefly through them. So planning for play, embedding consideration of the ways in which children use and move through space into planning processes, making greater efforts to avoid inadvertently removing or constraining. I'm really glad Etive talked about spaces for teenagers particularly, because if children don't have the space, they won't play. And now, yes, planning for play, that does mean we work with, you know, planning policy and planning control about developing supplementary planning guidance in relation to the quality of spaces that new developers are doing, and real high level policy. But it also means is that when we have a relationship with our green infrastructure officer, who came out to one of our play sessions a few months ago, they were looking to plant some trees and were saying they're actively consulting, where do you think these trees should go? And it soon unfolded, because it was a snowy day, the children were sledging down that field where she had trees planned to be planted. So immediately they said, well, we can't plant trees there. And by having that relationship, that's what we're talking about, real low level stuff as well as the big stuff. Play work is community development. So, I mean, we've got projects over, you know, that have existed for 10 years now, running play schemes in community. We're fortunate enough to have 3 adventure playgrounds within Wrexham, who are the hubs for communities, and helping other departments understand why play work is such a significant role, and recognition of the role of play work within communities. Again, when I'm talking to people, I have to do an elevator pitch sometimes, and it's like, well, yes, we deliver play schemes for 2 hours in the community, but what happens outside of those 2 hours? And the role of play work is community development. It's about creating those and cultivating those conditions for children to experience good opportunities. Professional development for play. So again, this goes back to the language I talked about earlier. So the play workforce, and helping people to understand that, yes, you might not work face to face with children, or you might not even see a child in your work, but you are making decisions that impact children's opportunities to play. Therefore, you need to be more aware of this. So we have quite an extensive training program. We've trained artists, we've trained sports coaches, youth workers, planners, counsellors, because they all have an impact on children's play. We've developed e-modules within the local authority, where any member of the local authority can access this e-module and understand about children's play, because it's vitally important to understand that, in addition to accredited qualifications towards play work. Policies for play. I was really fortunate when I came into Wrexham that a lot of the high level strategic work had already occurred. So, you know, we have a play pledge in Wrexham, which was approved by exec board. Play is mentioned within several policies, you know, the open public spaces strategy, within the sports strategy, within Wrexham. So by having those policies in place, there's already an initial, within the local authority, initial understanding and acceptance that play is important. And I think that's the real benefit of having place sufficiency within Wrexham, within Wales for the past sort of 10, 12 years, has allowed us to be in that position where that now is in place. And then finally, in terms of underpinning systems of our work, for me, are possibly the two most crucial. So the play development team, which is our team, again, fortunate enough to have a long-standing funding for the play development team. As it's acknowledged every cycle, we are the key driver in a lot of this work. That doesn't mean other departments aren't doing lots of work. There's some brilliant examples, particularly in Wrexham. The arts team have really embraced the concept of place efficiency, and they're off doing it with our support, as opposed to the other way around, where it's typically us driving it forward. But without a play development team driving the agendas forward, and more often than not, an officer told me we just need a little tap on the shoulder, just a reminder. We're leading on our priorities, so we're focused on that. But more often than not, some departments, they just need a tap, say, oh, don't forget play. And as soon as you say that, they go, oh yeah, of course. It's not, my experience is it's not intentional, but they do need that reminder. And therefore, without a play development team, an officer who's able to work with these departments, things don't progress as we like. And then finally, that partnerships of play, developing our collective wisdom. And what I've talked a lot about is that collective wisdom that exists within Wrexham, and I suppose across Wales, in that, you know, we have a shared language. We understand what it means, freely chosen, intrinsically motivated. We have officers within the local authority who are actively pushing forward place efficiency within their own teams. Having said that, these relationships are on a knife edge, because it's happened before. If somebody leaves the authority or gets a different job, that wisdom's lost, and you're almost starting again with officers. But it works the other way. You know, we've recently had head of environment services who was a former youth worker who knows exactly what I'm talking about, and knows the shorthand. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to develop those relationships. And when we talk about partnerships, yes, we have a place efficiency partnership in Wrexham. We only meet maybe annually, and that is quite potentially high level officers, but more often than not, it's me telling them how we're moving forward and what our new priorities are, and feeding back place efficiency. But my experience is, and what we found is, it's much more important having sort of task and finish groups on specific projects, and bringing in the expertise as and when you need, because I think people stay more engaged in terms of officer time when they feel part of something. Yeah, so they're our underpinning systems. And let me check my time. And then as we go into next steps in Wrexham, so we were fortunate enough to be involved in some hyperlocal research within a community with Wendy, Gloucestershire and Ludicology. And what it's really done for us is it's taken our community profiling work that we've done previously to another level, and it's enabled us to look at where we are in Wrexham through this new assessment and identify communities where we can do really in-depth focused work, where we could start to really make actions that have tangible difference to children and young people based on what children and young people in those communities are telling us. And we see that as the way forward within Wrexham, about making even further real tangible change. I think that's about it. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Gareth. It's really good to get that kind of historical perspective of having been around place efficiency for a long time. And one of the things that came through for me on that is how it operates at different interconnected levels, from the hyperlocal to what you call the high level. It's not really a hierarchy, is it? But we always think of it as a hierarchy of policy and getting policy changes. and those things, they all have to happen in an interwoven way, all at the same time. I just want to check something out with you. When you were looking at your all of your play satisfaction surveys and the total numbers, you could see how they kind of they're creeping up, and then suddenly they drop in 2021. But you didn't say anything more about that. What else happened in 2021? Can't remember now.
Oh, did I not mention? I meant to. Yeah, because of COVID.
I think so. Yeah.
I think I had a point underneath that said 86% of children said that COVID had impacted the way in which they played. And it was some of we asked a specific question in 2021 around COVID, and some of the responses were quite sobering.
Yeah. It just goes to show, so things can go backwards even though they're going forwards, because play doesn't operate in a vacuum. And if things change in the rest of children's lives, then that's going to affect what happens. So thank you so much. I've not been looking in the chat, so I've no idea what kind of questions we've got. But if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And have we got anything to be going on with, Mike and Ben?
Well, there was a very specific question for Etive, which was about, is there any connectivity between Glasgow's PSA and the natural park city? Glasgow's a natural park city, so that was a specific one. And then the others are really around, I think me and Mike are suggesting something around what makes it possible to affect change, what needs to be in place to be able to respond as a part to your play sufficiency assessment.
Is that two different questions?
There are two different questions there.
Okay, should we take them one at a time? Should we do the national park one first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we do tie into the national park, the City National Park, because we've already embedded our police efficiency assessment results within our open space strategy. So that's like our green space and our forest and woodland strategy that we have for the city. So I would love to see our parks spill out into the streets and have green streets for play, and eventually that you can play your way across Glasgow. I think that would be wonderful, using all the green spaces that are available to everybody.
That's brilliant, and I think this shows the strength of having place efficiency embedded in planning, actually, because it sounds like it makes it easier for you to access all those spatial planning policies. I think. And what was
and we mapped all the results from the police efficiency, and we've got an environmental digital twin, which is a map base. So it's like an electronic atlas, and I can make the police efficiency layer available after this if people are interested, because it has all the reports and findings on it as well. So that's made a big difference to explain to people what we're trying to do with the police efficiency assessment.
That's great. Thank you. What was the second part of the question?
What needs to be in place to affect change, to implement those responses that are identified in the assessment?
Is that a general one, or is that specifically to Etive?
A general one.
Oh, okay. Okay. Does anybody want to go for that one?
I was going to maybe echo, but I think Etive and Gareth kind of touched on it. But I think relationships. Oh,
Hi.
is that all right? I think the relationships thing is really important, and I would echo what Etive said about, like, I'm not a play expert, so I think I pull on my expertise from those that I consider to be the play experts, because I do have them around me. But I think the relationships bit is massively important in terms of just bringing people on a bit of a journey with you, that influencing bit to show just how, play is an organizing principle. This is part of your work. We're kind of bridging policy and agenda, and we're all coming together around this thing that is a part of what you are doing. And so I think that helps. And then I think also what helps is the political commitment side of it, is just like giving that permission to do it, basically. And just to be cheeky and maybe answer a little bit of the other question, is that in Leeds, we have tended to, apart from a leader of the opposition that opposed place sufficiency in exec board, apart from that, we tend to get really good political support because they like the local councillors, they just get it. They're on the doorsteps and they're talking to parents all the time. So they hear about kids and kids' needs, and our kids haven't got anywhere to play. So they hear it a lot. So I think they kind of get it. And they've been very excited about all the ball game signage stuff. And so it don't tend to need to persuade people to kind of the political figures around that. So the permissions, but yeah, I'll stop talking. Sorry.
Can I just ask a follow-up question on that then, linked to somebody else has just asked here about, you know, as somebody that's if you're a council outsider or, you know, a resident, how would you try and get councillors or officers interested or intrigued as a first step? I suppose what you're describing there, Jenny, is where you've had the opportunity to do the research and then you're sharing the research with them, but how do you get people engaged initially in the idea of thinking about doing place efficiency?
In countries where it's not a statutory duty, of course. Yes.
I don't know if anybody else wants to answer that.
Anybody got any thoughts?
Is Tracey still with us? Have we got you, Tracey?
I don't mind having a start of that. I think it's really difficult. I think my presentation was based around us having this legislation in Wales, so officers and members, they have to actively be engaged. When it comes to residents, what I found is working in communities is it's really difficult to work with communities that don't want you to work with them in the first instance. I think a lot of that willingness to engage dictates what we can do and what we can achieve within communities. What I would say from a Wrexham point of view is we try and we make ourselves available. We advertise what it is we're doing. We report back. We openly will say, if anybody wants to support children to have better opportunities or more opportunities to play, then contact us. And having that openness to the public, but it is challenging, and it can be challenging.
And I guess what is a really good way in, and I think this is actually, I'm just thinking back to when we first started talking about it with Ben and Mike, because we have been on this journey of understanding with it, really. And I remember right at the start thinking, oh, it's actually a right. It's actually a right they have to play. You know, so I'm wondering from a resident's point of view, is your way in is maybe to go to your local political figure and say, my child has a right to play. You know, there's a general comment 17 with a principle of sufficiency that we should be aiming for. So maybe that's kind of a good way in, is kind of through that child's rights bit, is kind of like, and you know, and then there's kind of like, oh, right, well, we have a responsibility then. What can we do from that local authority place? I don't know. Yeah, lobby. I'm all for lobbying for play.
Yeah.
Lots of lobbying.
Can I just come in on that? Yeah, I was just going to say that in Scotland, certainly the use of the place standard tool has helped immensely, because we've not only got the adults version, but we've got the young person and children's version. So they can be included in the engagement process really, really easily. And your results can be done in, you know, age groups as well. So you can feed back in age groups. But I think the biggest thing is that allowance to let people tell their lived experience story. And that seems to, every single time we go and do it, and even the hard to reach communities that just don't want to talk to you, will eventually want to tell you the story about what it's like to live in their place. So I found that building on that in the place efficiency assessment has been just, you know, just a logical step to take.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I am still here, Wendy.
Good.
I mean, we just started really quietly in Sandwell. We just kind of didn't ask permission to start. And then what happened was, when the penny starts to drop, that, you know, like Jenny's just said, that it is a right, and it is enshrined in international law. The penny starts dropping, and we started to gain momentum, and it's kind of, because of the nature of it being evidence-based, it's kind of grown a life of its own. So we just started really quietly, you know, and allowed it to go. And we were really looking at child friendly as an agenda also was happening at the same time. And so place efficiency really kind of, once, you know, the council have committed to the notion of child friendly, it's not really possible not to commit to place efficiency as part of that. So yeah, we just started it without asking permission, really, and then it just grew.
That's great. That's great. And don't ask permission, just do it. and then you've got the evidence, haven't you? And you can go with the evidence. But that requires somebody within the council to have that capacity and capability as well. So yeah. And what else have we got, Ben and Mike?
Well, I think we kind of took a slight tangent there. So if anybody's got any additional thoughts to add about the things that make actually responding to the research possible. I mean, we've had quite a bit there about political support. Anything else that needs to be in place to do place efficiency?
I guess it's not just, I think Karen put something in the chat, who is the active Leeds officer leading on place efficiency alongside me. And she said about starting where your support is. And I think that's probably what we've done, and that makes it happen, is you start with your allies and then you grow and you kind of build momentum, and you kind of start that kind of, you just kind of you're constantly influencing, and you're kind of constantly kind of growing support. So, and I think, and I oh no, this is another political thing, so I won't say that. I was going to say that because we went to exec board, you are, you know, part of it was we go back and we report to exec board, which is quite handy for holding people's feet to the fire a little bit. You don't want to be the team or the officer that's slowing the progress. So that's useful. But I think, yeah, just kind of not really taking your eye off, constantly like raising awareness, talking to people about it, building support, kind of growing the momentum around it, I think really, really helps.
I mean, I think that's really key there, because you've got both things, isn't it? You've got very strong strategic commitment because of it being endorsed and supported at a cabinet level. And that really matters, because it gives everybody else then permission to work on that. That was one of the key messages, isn't it? That officers need permission to spend time on this stuff. But then also it's really important to have real life examples of things working. And Gareth was saying that, like, officers need an opportunity to work together on a thing. And what you then start to generate is a sense of hope that things are possible. And it's the same with the stories of children's lived experiences. It's important that we highlight where the problems are, but it's also very powerful when we show people what's possible. And I think that changes people's hearts and minds when you go, well, this isn't just about designated play areas. Look where playing is possible.
Yeah,
you've all got those examples, starts to, you know, gives motivation, momentum to it. Sorry, go on, Etive.
We're already finding that the police efficiency assessment results that we've gathered to date, and it's still ongoing getting that data in, is that it's having an impact on the planning applications already. So I get pulled into a lot of conversations about how people fit play into new housing developments, or if they're retrofitting an area, how do we kind of make the most of the spaces available? And that didn't happen before, so that's been a really quick impact that we've seen already in the city.
Yeah, Gareth.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to pick up on kind of what Mike was saying around hope and about giving communities hope. And I think there is a real sense of when we work with communities, it is around, right, how are we going to get in 100,000 for this new playground? How are we going to do this? And when you open those conversations and talk about place efficiency, and we've seen it recently, it can be as simple as a resident going out and cutting back a bush that opens up a space for that children can now play in. It's not, and residents sing, oh, I can do that. And a bit of what Tracey was saying about just doing it and asking for forgiveness later, but just by providing that sense of hope, oh, we can actively make a difference that doesn't involve hundreds of thousands of pounds or planning or anything like that. Some small tangible wins can go such a long way, particularly when working with residents.
Yeah, and Karen's put that in the chat as well. Having examples has been hugely powerful. I'm afraid we've run out of time. It is time to bring things to a close. There is one other question that is in the chat about just who else is doing place efficiency where it isn't a statutory duty, and it'd be really interesting to find that out. So if you are, can you let us know? But we will bring this to a close. I'll say a massive thank you to our wonderful speakers, Jen, Rutherford, Etive Currie, Tracey Jobber, Gareth, Stacey, and thanks also to Play Wales and Genero for their admin and tech support, and to you for your contributions as well. You will be sent an evaluation form from today. Please do fill it out. We've got one more and we learn each time. So the next webinar is on Tuesday the 13th of May, same time, 12:30 to 2, which will be British summertime. And there we're looking at place efficiency at a neighbourhood level. So some people today have spoken about looking at like hyperlocal neighbourhood level. We're going to be looking at that in detail next week. And also place efficiency at neighbourhood level in different contexts, so play streets and schools. So we're going to be joined by Lauren Cole from Carmarthenshire in Wales, from Matluba Khan from Cardiff in Wales, and those specific perspectives will be Alison Stenning from Playing Out and Michael Follett from Opal Outdoor Play and Learning on transforming school playtimes. So if you want to join us for the fourth one, you will need to register for it. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll let you go. Just gone 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.